Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June edition of Real Talk Transforming Your Energy in 2021. I'm really excited for today's guest, but to introduce myself, my name is Rosemarie Domina. I go by Rosie for short, and I'm the founder of Reaching New Depths Coaching. And today we have a special topic that I feel like is relatable across all ages, across all genders. And I'm really honored to have a personal friend of mine and a fellow coach, Alyssa Saquilayan, who is here today to speak with me. So how are you doing? Just want to check in with you first. You're all good? Ready to go, Miss Alyssa? Awesome.
Yes.
So I want to officially introduce her by reading her bio. So she is a nurse coach, yoga teacher, and a Reiki practitioner born and raised in San Francisco. She empowers Filipinx women and women of color to reclaim body sovereignty beyond their external qualities so that they can glow with confidence. As a second-generation Filipino American recovering from a binge eating disorder, Alyssa was able to reconnect with herself and heal through deep personal guidance, thought reprogramming, and grounding practices. With a background in science and spirituality, she bridges mind, body, and soul to encourage long-lasting change in her clients' lives. She became a nurse coach because she acknowledges that there are not enough spaces for people of color to talk about their body image, so now it's her deepest calling to co-create transformation, reminding others that they are worth more than their physical body, that in their truest essence, they are powerful, loving, and enough. That truly warmed my heart. And I will say we had an event last month when I was getting to know her more in a personal level. Like we met years ago, but to really get to know her now as a fellow nurse and a nurse coach has been a truly transformational experience for me personally. But Alyssa, thank you so much for being on Real Talk, Transforming Your Energy. Please share with us what you do, your background, your story. I'll let you go with the flow, and of course chime in when there's comments, or just I'll ask any questions to clarify anything that comes up.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this Tuesday evening to talk about how we can transform our energy. And I'm just really honored to be in this space with you. A little bit about me. I am a nurse. I graduated from my nursing from nursing school in 2013 and worked in different settings, outpatient settings, community health. I'm also a yoga teacher and a Reiki practitioner, and I am a coach, a nurse coach for, like you said, women of color and Philippine exes who want to reclaim their body image. And it is my calling to do that because I know how debilitating it can feel when we have concerns around body image, and how it can not just affect our physical life, but all aspects of our life, whether it's socially, in our relationships and things like that. And so I just really want to raise awareness and normalize these conversations, because it's okay to have these conversations. And I think there's a lot of shame around it. And shame thrives in secrecy and silence, and the antidote to that is having these spaces to talk about it. And so as a coach, that's my mission, is to work with folks one-on-one, in a group setting, in a community, so that we can really dismantle these thoughts, so that we can really have more joy in our life.
I hear you. And I think societal pressures of how you should look like, pretty much dictating what you should do, what you should look like, what you should wear. I mean, there's so many things, or it could be even culturally influenced. So I hear you. As I mentioned, it's an important field and topic, and especially to set that space, that safe space to do it, because these are deep personal issues, which a lot of us sometimes can't even admit to, maybe not even aware of it. So how did this truly come for you on a personal level? And in your bio, it mentioned you were recovering from a binge eating disorder. You have recovered from it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think it runs deep. So initially, I think when I started getting into like dieting and like exercising in college, I think also at this time I was going through like a breakup. And then at this time, me and my group of friends were into partying and going to raves and things like that, right? And having like that summer body and that like rave body. So it felt like it was something, all of my peers would do it too. So it was just something that I kind of wanted to do as well. And it started off from a superficial level of trying to attain a certain body shape or certain physique. And so the dieting started, the counting calories started, the macros started, counting macros started, intermittent fasting. I mean, I think I've done almost all of the diets under the sun. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I just wanted to put it out there that there's nothing wrong with shifting your food choices in order to feel healthier. And for me, it wasn't that. It was because I didn't feel good about myself, because I didn't like my body, because I essentially hated myself. And exercise became a form of punishment. Food became an escape or a way to numb my emotions. And so I didn't realize this at the time, but there was a moment where I remember I was getting ready for a friend's birthday party, and I spent hours trying to figure out what I wanted to wear and like ruminating on, you know, is this gonna look good? Am I gonna feel good in this outfit? And then finally getting to the point where I found an outfit where I felt decent in. And then even after that, going to the party and being so consumed with the food that was going to be there. Will it fit my macros? What exercise am I going to have to do afterwards in order to burn all of these calories? Am I going to have an alcoholic beverage? All of those kind of fell into this mindset of feeling like I wasn't enough. And so, you know, after that, it came to a point where I was like, okay, I need to get some extra support here. And I, you know, decided to go to therapy, and that was really helpful. And even in therapy, I still felt alone because I was a woman of color who felt like I was experiencing body dysmorphia or a binge eating disorder when I thought it was only for this certain type, you know, a white or thin woman. And so I guess long story short,
No, please go in detail as much as you want. It's your comfort level. Feel free to share. I think a lot of people can benefit from it for a few reasons. One, being a woman, and two, being someone of color. So I think there are, you know, there are things that you're expressing that I think a lot of us maybe like, as for me, even just listening to your stories so far, that I can identify with. And you're right, there are some societal differences when it comes to culture and race and ethnicity. So just giving you the heads up, please go into as much detail as you'd like.
Well, all right. Well, thank you. You know, and to kind of piggyback on the being a woman of color and furthermore, a child of immigrants, I feel like that adds another layer of this feeling like I needed to assimilate or conform to a certain society. So that I think also was a compounding effect of this, okay, I don't feel enough, or I have to fit in. I have to look a certain way in order to fit in. And so, you know, going through therapy and also investing in myself through coaching helped unravel more of these deeper layers of, you know, it's my culture that can also play a role. It can also be just habit, you know, like when I have created this habit and this cycle of overeating, starving myself, feeling shameful, or starving myself, feeling extremely hungry, overeating, feeling shameful. And it just became this cycle that I got used to. And it became almost like my MO. It was, I felt like I conditioned myself to think that way. And so giving myself the space to pause and really reflect on, okay, what are these thoughts that are coming up in my mind? You know, what are these stories that I'm making up? And how am I truly feeling? Like, how am I truly feeling? And being able to tap into that from a physical level, like, how am I feeling, um, uh, like hunger wise? And how am I feeling emotionally? Like, am I emotionally hungry right now? Do I need a hug? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need some kind of um, affection? Or am I really physically hungry? So being able to take a step back and see and observe my thoughts in a non-judgmental and really extremely curious way versus reacting and judging myself, I think was a huge game changer for me. And then when I started to really love myself at a deeper level, and I really appreciate everyone in my life, my family, my partner, my friends who have um, really walked through this journey with me, because it gave me permission to start looking within and loving myself so that I can allow other people to love me back. Um, and that was really huge. That was really huge for me.
I mean, I hear that from you. Thank you for sharing that. How, if you were to think in hindsight, when do you think, how old were you when when the body image, when you started seeing distortions in your body image? Were you a young kid? If you were to really think back, the first few thoughts you were having, like maybe I should wear this, or maybe I should start going on this diet because of this. I get curious as to like at what age
Mm-hmm,
does this truly
mm-hmm.
start? Because it can start very young and by things you're influenced by. So what was that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's different. To answer your question, the age I feel like I really started thinking about my body was probably the first time I heard, "Oh, you're looking tabachoy," or
um,
"Oh, you're getting skinny," right? Or, why don't you need to eat all of the food on your plate, right? So just hearing these messages growing up, um, and having this focus around the body and image, and then that being really confusing when I heard messages around eating, I think was probably the first time I started thinking about body image, like not consciously, but
mhm.
probably, subconsciously.
How old were you? Do you remember how young you
Mm,
were when you started noticing those kinds of sayings?
Probably like around 10ish. Mm, 10ish.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show you how much, and we've talked about this before between the both of us, like how some actions or majority of actions as an adult really stem from the way that you were
Mhm.
treated as a kid and how you were able to cope. Because what was the standard of right and wrong was most likely dictated by the people who raised you, and it was their truth, but then we wouldn't have the developmental ability at that point in time
Right.
to really discern what is right or wrong at that moment. So it's interesting. I thank you for sharing that. 10 years old, very young age. I mean, anyone who is on live, where were you at 10 years old? Were you hearing these kind of comments, whether you're on live now, if you want to answer, or if you're watching the replay, really think about if you can relate to her story so far. How young were you? I mean, for me, I remember hearing it at a young age too. It was like preteen when puberty started hitting, and comments from family were pretty much the same. Oh, you look too skinny. Oh, you look fat. I remember this girl in high school was like, "What's wrong with your thighs? They look like, big water balloons." I was like, "What?" But as a teenager, like I was in high school, and I was like, "What do you mean? What's wrong?" But it's so interesting how those things come out, and you don't really think about, like, you feel bad about yourself more than anything, and you alluded to shame, which is huge, or that you're not enough. But I've heard, like, I just want to stress that for anyone raising a kid and you have awareness around this, for yourself and what you say to your child, to really think about how your words do influence them,
Mhm,
because it happens, and I think both of us can relate to
mhm.
that on a deep level. So what was the turning point for you when you're just like, I had enough of the diet, the weight, and maybe this could also relate to the eating disorder as well? You could break those into two or you combine them into one, but you know, where you're just looking in the mirror and saying, this is just me making up a scenario, and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. Were you feeling physical symptoms? Were you feeling drained because you noticed your emotions were just drained of thinking too much about the details of how you looked or what you, of your appetite or what you should eat?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I also wanted to piggyback on what you were talking about in regards to our, parenting. And I think, exactly what you said. I think it's really important to notice and be aware of the words that are coming out of our mouth, especially with younger kids, because they're absorbing all of this information and all of this at a very young age. And also want to highlight that, I don't put any blame on my parent. I think I've done a lot of healing in regards to like the narratives I've heard from my parents, and it's not to shame them either. I have so much compassion for them because these are probably the messages that they heard growing up too, and that is not their fault that they have also been programmed that way to operate from that space. And so my goal is to be aware of that and not necessarily change them or shame them or get upset with them, but to take initiative within my own life to change this trajectory and this narrative for my peers, my future parents and their children, my future descendants, so that we can break this cycle of, generational, whatever that word is, trauma, narrative, stories.
I have a comment here on our chat. One of our viewers right now said at age 6, her aunt said she was so much bigger than her older sister. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. Wow. See, at a young age, when we grow up as kids, I always describe it as our brains are like sponges. We're just absorbing information. All right. And sometimes our reaction is dependent upon the people who are around us. And again, I thank you for bringing that up, because there is also part of the healing is recognizing the people that were telling you this probably is their truth, that it was influenced by who they grew up with. And so how you place blame is another, where you place blame or even releasing blame or any of that anger that you have towards that person in a compassionate way shows a lot about you. And that is a huge strength to really build, to say that I don't blame you for this, although you said this to me, because I know that you possibly would have been hurt in another way, right? And I just want to point that out. That's a very powerful piece of healing, is releasing and forgiving the person for what they've said, and also knowing too that they probably didn't come from this malicious place, that's probably was their truth passed on to them. So thank you for pointing that out. We can only do the best we can. Till this day, I love you, Mom, but you'll still say things to me and I'm like, okay, Mom. I'm like, exactly. That's your truth. I think now it's more of like, the anger has gone away, but it's more of like, that's your truth. We'll just agree to disagree. You're entitled to your opinion, but I don't take it personally because that is what she believes in. I don't. So I think but thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So all these like deeper things and deeper, but we release these kinds of trauma, what kind of peace and love that can truly bring to your life, right? For yourself first. So I'm going to go back to that question. The turning point event for you that led to, I am going to work with a therapist. I am going to focus more on me. And I know that process is easier said than done. That's your own personal journey, what you had to go through, the struggles, the ups and downs. But was there a certain significant event that you can remember?
I think it was a point where it was really affecting my anxiety, and anxiety in the workplace. I also noticed that I had these interesting quirks around like food and substances, like wanting to only drink coffee all day because I know in my mind, the story I was telling myself was, it's going to curb my appetite. I'm not going to have to eat. It'll keep me energized during the day. taking, honestly, Adderall. Taking Adderall because I thought that it was so hard for me to focus at work. It was so hard for me to focus on my trainings, and I associated that with having ADHD, or thinking that it had to do with that, and being on Adderall, and then using Adderall also as a crutch to curb my appetite and help me lose weight. So I think the turning point was that, and going to a 10-day silent meditation retreat where I literally had to be in complete silence for 10 days, not talk to anyone, no eye contact, nothing, completely silent. And I was encouraged to sit with myself and my thoughts. And there was a moment I remember sitting, and we were meditating like literally from like 6 a.m. all the way to 7 p.m. all day, other than taking breaks to eat 3 times a day. And there was a moment in meditation where I simply was aware of the thoughts that were coming on in my head, and they were all self-loathing thoughts and really mean narratives that were just swimming in my mind. So it was after that moment, I was like, okay, I think I need support. I need support to, one, unpack all of this, and two, just be able to express this in a way that it feels safe to me, in a space where I'm talking to someone not judgmentally, and someone who is a third party who can just hold space for me. So that was a moment where I was like, okay, I need to seek therapy, and I need to get some coaching here, because I can't do this on my own.
Yeah. No, I mean, I absolutely agree that how helpful that can be to have any support system, whether that it's a coach or a therapist, to guide you through this. And it could be completely objective, compassionate, and not judgmental to your story, and help just guide you on your journey. It's a powerful thing. And it's interesting how you went on a silent retreat and how that's how it shifted, because that's what you only are left with, your thoughts at that point. Wow. And that was your truth, to come out of that and to really seek that help. It's hard, I think, in this society, in this culture. Maybe you agree, disagree, but it's easy to get distracted, right? And whether that is our phones, or having a snack at the bedside, right? Turning on the TV when we don't want to think about certain things, or even deeper things like this, we tend to avoid it, which I think is natural, because it doesn't feel good. You're right, it doesn't. So thank you, for sharing that. And the substance part of it, of taking Adderall, is something, in my practice, as a nurse too, that I've commonly seen with folks who who have an eating disorder, to help offset their appetite, because it is a stimulant. So I do get what you're saying with that. So thank you for sharing all that. I'm curious. So based on your journey and what you've been through, and starting to go through this process of unpacking, finding clarity, truth, and peace, how long did it take from the start of that, so after your silent retreat, to actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm starting to appreciate you for who you are?
It definitely was not overnight.
Oh, I bet. I'd be surprised.
Definitely.
Who are you working with? Give me their name.
Oh, man.
I bet. I bet.
That's a good question. Let me think. So I pretty much like self-diagnosed myself with like an eating disorder. I didn't even know what first of all, I didn't even know what binge eating was. I thought I Googled one day, overeating, is this a problem? And saw binge eating. I was like, oh, okay. Tick, 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 tick. That's all me. That's all me.
You went to the Google doctor?
Google doctor.
The Google. Anyway, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Doctor does help sometimes. uh, so that was probably around 2013, and started going to therapy in 2017. And so, I was trying to navigate this thing for myself, and unknowingly having a binge eating disorder for like 4 years. And when I finally went to therapy and started getting that support, there was a statement my therapist actually said. I was venting to her about how I just can't look at myself in the mirror. And every time I look at myself in the mirror, I go directly to my stomach. That's the one thing that I just like, I don't even look at myself. I just go directly to my stomach. And I can't get my mind off of it. It's just, the only thing I think about when it comes to physical activity and my food choices. And then she made this statement and she said, Alyssa, look at yourself in the mirror and zoom out. And look at yourself as a whole. And that statement was just like mind blowing for me, because I never was even able to look at myself in the eyes. I couldn't look at myself in the eyes and say, I see you or I appreciate you. So the moment she said that, it started to help just heal my self-image. And I would say it probably took me like a year. It probably took me a year or 6 months to a year to really start looking at myself and saying, I see you, I love you, I love you. It took from I see you, I appreciate you, I'm grateful for you, I like you, I love you.
That progression. Can you repeat those statements one more time?
I see you, I appreciate you, I'm grateful for you, I like you, I love you.
That's awesome. It's the change and stepping up to those words in that fashion can be beneficial for anyone who is just wanting to have some appreciation for themselves. So even starting off, I'm not even going to say small, whatever word you're comfortable with, and moving up to whatever word that is for you to absolutely feel like you're beautiful. So I had to repeat that one more time because those are powerful words. And just the progression of finally saying, I love you and I see you for who you are and I accept you. Damn, sorry, that just kind of, it made my heart like drop for that. Because loving ourselves is probably one of the hardest things to do in this lifetime. And it's probably the first time I've ever said that out loud, but it is a journey. If you ask somebody, do you truly love yourself? Most will hesitate. They won't answer like, absolutely, yes. Some people be like, yeah, I'm okay with myself. And that kind of shows you at where they are with how they appreciate. So that's very powerful. So I'm going to transition the question a little bit for you, because now that you have your coaching practice and you are, holding space for folks who are overcoming these personal barriers of body image and helping women of color, the Filipinx. I think it's great that you have a specific focus. If someone were to approach you from a younger age, so let's say like a teen, adolescent, young adult, what are 3 tips you would give them if they're just like, people are making fun of me at school, I feel like I need to lose all this weight to get into that size 0 jeans? How would you approach as a teenager with body image issues who's starting to recognize that they actually do have them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I love that you're asking about the teens, because they are put under a lot of pressure to from society, from their peers to look a certain way. And I think also at that age, right, we really care about our peers and being accepted in, you know, in groups and things like that, and also discovering our identities. And so if I was to offer 3 tips, it would probably be, one is be really aware of what this appearance ideal is and acknowledge where it's coming from.
Mm.
Like, it's coming from messages from the media. It's also coming from a very unrealistic body type that is majority not attainable, from attainable for an average American. And 2, I would also encourage them to make a list of all of the things that they like about themselves. And it doesn't have to be like physical. It could be also, you know, internal, or it can be something, for example, like, I like the way I smile. I like the way I can listen to my friends. I like the way I bring light and energy into a room. And by doing that, it helps just remove the focus on the physical body, but also on other parts that are really important to the individual and what makes them whole. It's not just about the external appearance, no matter how much our society puts emphasis on that. And 3, I would say probably the same thing my therapist said, is zoom out and notice all of the unique gifts that you possess, that really bring, you know, joy and are a gift. Because, you know, and I heard this one quote from, I forget who it's by, but it's, you know, just be yourself. Just be yourself, because everyone else is taken. And I think, you know, especially for teens, I just really feel for them, because I could see how I was also in that space. And just being able to remember that you're so much more. You're so much more than just your physical body.
That's awesome. So 1 is to be aware of their opinion and acknowledge where these, I'm going to call them thought distortions, are coming from. 2 is to make a list of the traits that they do like about themselves, right? And you use the great one, I like my smile, right? That's awesome. And 3 is to zoom out. So looking at it from like it's like using a camera and just zooming out and seeing it from a third person point of view and recognizing and acknowledging their gifts. Does that sound, I'm just paraphrasing what you said, but I think those are powerful tips for those who are younger, who are just really starting to come into awareness of how their environment starts to affect them. And this could even be younger than teens as well. I think just going through grade school, right? And how do parents, I mean, could be tips for parents as well. You know, how can they facilitate conversations with their children if they start doubting or they bring up an issue that's related to this. I'm gonna switch the gear one more time for us adults who are starting to recognize that the stories and thoughts in their head that they've created and have played on repeat for years is starting to affect them. And of course, in relation to body image. What would be some starting points for someone who is older, who's carried this kind of baggage for a long time in this story, to start releasing and find healing?
I think it goes back into the question you asked me earlier, and this is something I also go through and explore with my clients, is asking them, like, when was the first time you heard this growing up? Like, what age was that? And you know, to give you an example, for me, now that I really think about it, if I really think even deeper about the age I heard it, it was probably like kindergarten. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it didn't have to do with my body image at that time. It had to do with like just me as a person and that identity. You know, in kindergarten, I was made fun of for saying a word in English and my Tagalog accent came out, and everyone in the class made fun of me. And I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. And again, going back to this feeling of not feeling accepted in my community was something I felt like was the tape that was playing in my head. Because I didn't fit in, I had to change my body type. So that would be is one, you know, ask yourself like when was the first time you heard this, and then being able to create that time and that space to re-nurture that younger self. If that means having play dates with your younger self, having these conversations and reminding them that they are innately and were born worthy and enough. At that age, like you said, they didn't have the resources to, you know, speak out or cope in a way we as an adult can now. So now as an adult, having this mental space, we can give our younger selves these resources. Two is, I think it's very similar to adolescence, you know, being able to make a list of all the things we like about ourselves and like having a gratitude list, because we don't do that enough. We don't take time to praise ourselves, to celebrate ourselves. And I think as a woman of color or as a Filipina, we were taught to not do that because we did, you know, we shouldn't seem prideful or like we're boasting or we're showing off. And that's not the intention behind it. The intention is to really acknowledge and recognize that you are fucking powerful. You're fucking powerful and you are beautiful, like the way you were born, no matter what, flaws and all. You're perfectly imperfect. Yeah, and I think three is, let me just think about this one. I'm between two.
It's okay. Take your time. I think these are powerful. And I just to piggyback off of what you're saying, for those who are tuning in or watching the replay, you're addressing a part of yourself that could not cope with it. And it's not anything bad. It's just accepting that you didn't have that ability to do that when you're a kid. So that is your wounded child in essence. And we all have it. We all do. So how do you give that part of you love back to yourself? One thing I recommended to a client was to write her little self, I mean, I won't say her name, but little self, a letter, like a love letter from her present self. Because now she can understand years later who she is and appreciate and value herself, but not as that young little kid. So I think that's, just want to throw out that example too, that how powerful it is that you can give yourself that love from a place that's very deep. I mean, I call mine little Rosie. No surprise. I talk to little Rosie sometimes because she got some trauma since first grade. I hear you. Have you thought of that third one?
Yeah, I would say it's having this vision, like taking a moment to visualize yourself. Like if you were to wave a magic wand and you could, you know, if everything can be in your ideal life, visualize that for yourself and then start doing it now. Because a goal, this is like a quote by one of the coaches out there, his name's Rich Litvin, and he says, a goal is a place to, it's not a place to get to, it's a place to come from. So when you can see that vision for yourself and you start acting in the now, And of course, there, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be some discomfort around it. And that's okay. It's okay seeing that and still finding, whether it's finding the support you need or doing it anyway, doing it even though you're scared, doing it even though you're doubtful, doing it even though you're not sure. Because when you have the courage to actually act on it, you're creating these neural pathways in your brain to start making those actions a little bit more easier. So yeah, that would be my 3.
Nice. Thank you for sharing those. Very, very deep stuff. And, reiterating again that this kind of work does take time. So being just very real and direct with everyone in the community here, when you start to dive into deeper work that involves self-healing, self-forgiveness, there's not a time frame. Time doesn't even exist in essence. It's really where you go on your journey and experiencing those little wins along the way. Like what Alyssa said about just the progression of her words that she used when she stared at the mirror and eventually getting to "I love you." Like it took time. So just going back to that instant gratification piece of it, I feel like wouldn't work in this formula of starting to appreciate who you are. Maybe temporarily, I can say that, you could put a case, temporarily it could, but for a longer lasting effect. And how you also mentioned about changing the pathways in our brain to break a habit and create a new pathway to think that I love myself. If someone comes to you, may trigger you, you have a choice to be like, oh, I'm going to go back to that story of when it happened, or you can say, I'm going to let that go because that's not me anymore. So to be at that place where you can stand true in your next thought and your next action, and again, not be triggered in the same way, is a powerful place to be, because it comes from a place of wholeness. It comes from this authentic place because now you know for yourself who you are, and that brings you joy inside. So that's beautiful, the way that you shared that. So there was one person in the chat here who mentioned we need to bring this to more social Panay media. So we'll chat. I agree. I mean, hey, Alyssa focuses on that primarily too. And I think this is something we should collaborate on again at some point in time to really bring this, especially to Filipinx. Like I do agree with you. It's something that's not talked a lot about because culturally, in some ways, it's still not accepted to be a strong woman who loves herself. So any other thoughts or stories that come to mind that you want to share?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add like a bonus tip for our elders or our older folks. Not elders, sorry. not our titas.
I was like, oh, sorry, girl. I'm like, oh.
For the older self.
That makes sense. I got you. I'm just playing with you.
You know what I mean. Yes. I think the bonus is when you feel like you're at a place where you could actually talk about this and talk about it with those offenders, the family members. Wow. For me personally, it was such a healing and courageous act when I was able to say to my mom, like, hey, I feel like I need help here. I feel very triggered when you make comments about my body or when you talk about food in this kind of way, and actually being able to express how I'm feeling. That was really hard for me because one, I was always taught that I should not speak up or talk back to my parents because I will get in trouble or it's bad. And also because emotional intelligence was something I never learned growing up. Being vulnerable and being able to identify what the emotion was I was feeling, knowing how that felt like in my body, and be able to express it was just like a whole different world. And I think if anyone feels called to take that courageous act and talk to their parents or talk to their caregivers, it's so enlightening, because I think for me, and this is what, only from my experience, you know, it helped my mom acknowledge her own feelings and her perceptions about body image, and also understand that her words were affecting me in a certain way. And so that also helped. I feel like that is where the generational healing comes in. It's like I'm helping my mom heal, and you know, my ancestors, I feel like, heal, in addition to our future descendants. And so this kind of just helped her like become more aware, and so she doesn't make comments about my friends who come over and make comments about their weight or their body image. And now doesn't do that to me, and is very cautious about, you know, what she says. And if she does says something, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to tell her how I'm feeling about it and how it's affecting me and my mental health.
That's awesome. You were able, generational, yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that your mom was able to give you that space and really hear you and acknowledge her part in that. So healing goes both ways. That's amazing. Amazing. That is truly a bonus tip. If you are courageous enough to really have that confrontation, I don't mean that in a negative way, but just coming into contact and really discussing with the person who has, you know, influenced your life to have certain kind of stories and thoughts is a very powerful thing to do. Wow. I thank you for sharing your tips on for teens, for more adults who are, you know, they find themselves in that space where they do possibly suffer from chronic body issues. That's why I separated the age, because at some point as an adult, you find that you've probably been doing this the whole time. Probably not consciously, but when you start to recognize it's been more than 10 years that I don't appreciate who I am, and I really never had. It's a different mindset, as opposed to someone who's a teen who is still pretty new and molding their mind and the developmental skills of how to move forward. It's a little bit different. So with that said, transitioning to you and what you do in your coaching practice, what do you offer, and do you have any events that are coming up in the near future?
Yeah, so right now I am offering a one-on-one program, and I have space for 3 more women of color, Asian Americans, Filipinxes who are really ready to dive deeper into the space, into this learning, and who is ready to co-create this better version, highest version of themselves. And if you're curious about it, if you simply just want to connect and see if it's a good fit, you know, there's always my Instagram. You can message me on Instagram and send me a DM at Alyssa Coaching. I'll also send you my link tree, Rosie, and all of the information is on there, my website, and all the details. And also upcoming in the next few months, if you feel like a group space is something that would be more beneficial for you, if you feel like being in community with other women of color who are also experiencing the same thing, I'll be relaunching a group coaching program in the next few months. I haven't decided when that is yet. So if you want to stay connected and learn more about when that would be, feel free to also send me a DM, hit me a follow on Instagram. I'll be updating on there as well.
Awesome, girl. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for being on today for the June edition of Real Talk Transform Your Energy. There are some comments here, possibly someone who you should connect with, which you can see afterwards, after we get off live. But body image, I mean, eating disorders, unfortunately, has become a very chronic issue. Unfortunately, it's common. And I use that, I'm not proud of saying that statement, but it has, especially when it comes to just not appreciating your body for how it is naturally and having to feel like you have to conform to a certain kind of image. So you pointed out some really, you know, with your own story and with what you do is, again, completely relatable to so many people. So thank you so much, Alyssa, for sharing that. I'm so happy you do what you do and who you focus on, which is a population that's in need of it. And so I do want to say, full of gratitude coming from this end, just thank you, for what you do. So amazing. So amazing. I'm like, damn, amazing girl coming up. So if you guys, whoever's watching live or the replay, reach out to her, even just have a consultation with her, start a conversation if this is something that you relate to and that you want to start your journey. And again, there's nothing wrong with asking a question of where do I begin or how can you help me, and she'll be there to do that. So with that being said, thank you for sharing. I will say what's coming up for next month. So next month for Real Talk Transforming Your Energy, I am celebrating my 1 year of doing this talk. So I decided to have my partner interview me. It's gonna be interesting, and I laugh. She's probably laughing to herself on the other end. But I feel like I've shared a lot about my story through social media, at least parts of it. So here's an opportunity to get to know me a little bit more, what I personally dive into with my coaching and how my journey came to be. And what other better person to do that than my partner, Una Trainer, who will be asking me very deep questions, not censored. It will be live just like this. And if you're interested to get to know me more and what I do, this will be a good opportunity to do that. Because it's one thing I know to see on social media through a post when you read it, and it's another when you see a person live talking about their own story, if you can relate to them. So just like how I bring on these guests for this show that I've been doing, and just even seeing Alyssa, if she is someone you're vibing good energy from this live talk, reach out to her. So with that being said, thank you again, Alyssa, for being my guest for June for Real Talk Transforming Your Energy. And to everyone else, I will see you next month. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.